Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Joy, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's jump straight into it. What originally pulled you into the fantastic world of people leadership and then into building ScaleJOY, which is a very good name?
Thank you. Well, I spent most of my career in human resources, and I think that's a natural path when you're an extroverted people pleaser. And I started, though, on the learning and development side, and over time, I just felt like I was so curious about the employees and their journey from how they came into the organization to what decisions enabled them to grow within the company, get promoted, what things stood in the way of high performance, what made leadership teams come together. And so over the years, I just kind of raised my hand and started taking on other parts of the HR remit or the people remit. And it was interesting because as I kind of elevated in my career, I was successful, but I felt like I got further and further away from my true gifts and my true calling, which was actually how I started in the function, which is really on the learning and development side. And HR is kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet kind of profession where you have everything from super compliance-oriented expectations to strategic work around talent and the business future. And so to be good at all of those things is actually quite impossible. And so that's why I think burnout is so high in this function. So probably about 7 years ago, I wrote in my journal, I want to do this work, but I want to do the part of it that I think is my calling. And I want to do it for myself. I want to be my own boss. And so I started side hustle consulting with 2 other former heads of HR and decided to have a baby at the same time. So I was kind of working a full-time job, side hustling, and becoming a mom for the first time. But it was also a time where I realized what I was capable of and I realized my potential. So after side hustling for a few years with co-founders, I broke out and went fully on my own and started ScaleJOY in 2020. So almost 6 years ago. And I wanted to just focus on the part of the HR function that I felt like was my gift, which was really around leadership development and creating better managers within companies. And so year 1, that's what I started with, and it's evolved quite a bit since then.
So what has it evolved in? Like, what is maybe to ask this differently, what's the number one problem that you help solving now with ScaleJOY?
So it's interesting because I think what I'm solving now is that the HR leader is actually the multiplier and such a linchpin in the transformation of organizations. But the model by which that leader is put into an organization and supported an organization is totally broken. So I'm trying to solve for, I think, a broken model of a function where I'm doing it from 2 approaches. I'm helping take some load off of her shoulders, and I'll say her because it's a majority female profession still. By running leadership team retreats and offsites, running executive coaching programs, and building bespoke manager training programs. So part of fixing the model is how do I take some of that load off of their shoulders and execute it in a way that's really done very well at a very high standard, also makes them look good if they have the right partner doing those things. But then the other side of the broken model is, as is like with any executive role, the head of HR needs community, but not community of people who are venting, community of high performers who are holding them accountable with empathy, but holding them accountable to be excellent. And so I've developed a couple of different communities to bring high performing people leaders together. So I think if the model can be more support, better community for the HR leader, and supporting them by doing parts of their job for them or with them so that they can focus on the things that come the most naturally to them. That's, I think, that's really the future of my business. And I think a niche that desperately needs attention.
The question I like to ask here is, what's the outcome? What's the benefit of working with you, Joy? And I'm going to rephrase it a bit here. What do you mean with, as an HR, she is a multiplier? What do you mean with that?
So when I was in that seat as a head of HR, I was under-resourced. I was expected to do a lot with a little. And a lot of the vendors that were out there were vendors who had good business models to make money, but they weren't necessarily designed for my best interest or for my company's best interest. So when I set out to start ScaleJOY, I thought to myself, what could I give them, this industry, this profession, that was different than what I could find when I was in the seat? And a lot of that has to do with actually enabling them to do a lot of this work themselves over time. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a French engineering founder, very, very brilliant person, yes. And
They tend to be. They tend
the
to
type. And he said, I think the only way leadership scales is if you teach the leaders how to teach. And that really stuck with me of, if I can teach the HR leader how to be a teacher, how to be a facilitator, keep her inspired with content, show her the easy ways of building programs and bringing them to life, give her battle-tested content. Facilitation, I think, is such a multiplier skill, because if you are becoming a good facilitator, you're naturally becoming a great storyteller, a curious question asker, an active listener. And it's also fun. Like, it's a really fun part of the job to develop people and develop leaders. So I'm helping HR leaders become multipliers by teaching them how to be teachers. And then I think they can unlock so much for their organizations, especially in the age of AI, where I think the days of having large teams around leadership or learning and development in-house are not going to be for long. So we've got to get creative about how we enable people to do this work in a way that's not going to burn them out, but is going to give them a lot of joy as they scale.
I like that. I like the nice little mention of the French elite here.
Very much so.
So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper though.
Okay.
What's the benefit for the company? Let's say, you come in,
Yep.
you help HR leaders and overall leaders become great teachers, great active listeners. I'm the CEO of the company. I'm like, that sounds great. And what?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because probably about a year and a half, 2 years into my company, I abandoned the head of HR as my main stakeholder. I said, none of this will work if the CEO is not on board, because culture starts at the top. So what I did was I started to spend a lot more time, especially with founder CEOs. And what I found was a lot of HR people try to evolve their founder CEO and de-risk them. And unfortunately, what ends up happening sometimes is they really dilute the uniqueness and the greatness of what that founder has as their vision. It's well intended, but it comes across not necessarily in a way that's going to drive the business. So what I found is I actually love trying to figure out what makes a founder and their culture very different and unique, and help them figure out the way to scale that and actually build the company of their dreams. And so I found actually getting really close to actually quite eccentric founders. I mean, I worked with people who they're not building a company for everyone, but that if we can figure out a way how to articulate and document what matters to them in terms of values and operating principles, that becomes the blueprint for scaling their culture. And if they can scale their culture in a way that everybody is happy to work there because they understand they're working at a very unique company with very specific principles and values that align with them, work is inherently more joyful. And I truly believe that you get outsized performance when people are engaged and happy in their job. But it really starts with the founder. So I developed this framework that's very simple. It's 3 steps. It's first, founders, you need to define your principles around work. And sometimes that is really specific tactical things like, best work is done face-to-face. We're a 5 days in office culture, perhaps. Or maybe it's, I expect excellence in every single seat. Therefore, we're not going to tolerate mediocrity, no matter if it's somebody who's right out of school or someone who's been working for 10 years. So help them really articulate their principles. But then the second piece is help them define the stories that shaped those principles and those beliefs. And then also collect the stories of the people in the company living out those principles on a day-to-day basis. And like that ritualization of storytelling to help people understand maybe some of these eccentric, not so popular beliefs, but also to see examples of them live in their day-to-day. And then to the point of ritualization, the third step is rituals. So how do we create rituals from one-on-one exchanges to the way we communicate on Slack to the way we do all hands meetings that actually go back to reinforce those principles? And so through that, it's like now I can come back to the head of people and say the work on the founders and the CEOs is happening alongside, and I'm only going to work with those companies where the CEO believes it is their job to build and sustain culture, and the chief people officer is there to be their right hand and their partner in doing it. And when we do that, people are engaged, revenue grows, the amount of IPOs, acquisitions, actual outcomes that have happened as a result, in part, of people investing in leadership development with ScaleJOY has been shocking and profound. Obviously, they have to have a good product. They have to have great vision. They have to be well capitalized, all of those things. But I think the piece we need to be talking about more is how they're scaling their culture.
I like rationalizing and operationalizing everything. So if I were to summarize, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Leaders become better teachers. Therefore, leaders become better leaders. The team is happier. The culture is better. People perform better. The company performs better.
100%.
That's the outcome. Love that.
Thank you.
You mentioned you were focusing more on the CEO now than the head of HR. I understand why. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have any specific industry, niche, company size? Like, who do you typically help with all that?
Yeah. So because my last 2 roles in-house were in venture-backed tech, my network has really been there. So I would say companies up to about 500 to 1,000 employees, so smaller on the spectrum of size, and started as really software and tech organizations. But truly, the industry has evolved a lot, and it's now much more about that alignment of philosophy from the CEO of I see the ROI of this work and I'm committed to it. And then in terms of the rest of the elements of like my customer profile, oftentimes there's an HR team of 1 or 2. It's kind of an under-resourced team who has a lot of ambitions and expectations on what they're going to deliver, but they simply cannot do it alone. So I can kind of be the silent partner sometimes. I can be the right hand. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes my work really different is I try to meet the company where they are and support them in a way that is scalable. So I have everything from if you want to be the person who is front and center with your company, is delivering this great content, these great experiences, I can give you content and tools and just enable you with do-it-yourself resources. Most of my work ends up being what I call done with you, where I am a collaborative partner, enabling them to deliver on great leadership development, but perhaps as an advisor or as a co-facilitator. And then finally, like the completely like I do it for you happens too. And sometimes it's actually a really strategic decision of bringing in someone external. I ran 25 offsites for leadership teams in 2025. And oftentimes running an offsite for a leadership team is a strategic decision for an HR leader to outsource because it allows them to stay at the table and be a participant and not have to step out and be the facilitator. And so I really think like meeting people where they are and enabling them to have amazing development for their leaders and their leadership teams, but in a way that scales with them is really something I do differently that I think is pretty beneficial.
I'm going to throw a massive curveball at you.
Oh, I can't wait.
Joy.
Yes.
And for people listening to us, I wouldn't do that if I wasn't feeling comfortable with Joy and wasn't liking what she was saying. I'm putting a huge disclaimer here.
Compliment.
So bear with me.
Better not mess it up.
Have you seen and watched this interview of the founder of Telegram? I don't remember his exact name. Who's built a massive multi-billion company now. I mean, Telegram, everybody will know. And if not, just check it out. Search Telegram on the internet. Who says that they don't have an HR department. They don't see the value of it. The way they recruit is they have a monthly competition where they have devs, software engineers compete between themselves. They, every once in a while, multiple times per quarter, I think, once per quarter, they look at the top performers over multiple months. They interview them for the culture fit, for the skill sets. It's already acknowledged that they are the best, and they recruit those. That's it. What do you think of that?
It's interesting. My new website's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks, and the tagline is HR is dead. So I love that. And I think what the problem that he's addressing and that I'm trying to address in a slightly different way is, like, with so many roles, what got us here won't get us there. And I think the way that HR has been structured is just not working. Like, I think about performance reviews, everybody complains about performance reviews. And it's like, if we go back to first principles and ask, what are we actually trying to do with performance reviews? Recognize above and beyond accomplishments, motivate those people, address maybe underperformance in a way that's coaching and motivating. But what ends up happening is the process takes over and the compliance and the box checking takes over. So it becomes this inordinate amount of time for managers to document and de-risk instead of actually focusing on, like, the top 2%. So I completely agree that I don't know that HR necessarily belongs in every company as it did once. And to that point, every company's needs on the people front are actually quite different. And so I think there's some organizations where HR is brought in because there's really immature management. And it's like, oh, finally, there's an adult in the room who isn't scared of having a hard conversation. I came into an HR job once and they said, oh, we're so glad you're here, Joy. We've been saving up all of our performance issues for the last 3 months for you to deal with. Right? Thank you. Yes, you're welcome. So again, like, I still think there's value in the profession when done right and with a different model. And companies getting creative about actually having expectations of their leaders to be good leaders. A lot of the HR job goes away if that happens. So I'm kind of all for it.
I like that answer a lot. Okay, so I think you've already alluded to it, because the new website, the way you communicate. Tell me more about how you get the attention of the CEOs for them to understand that they need leaders who are better teachers. And just small note here, I couldn't agree more. I think for me, as I'm actually scaling different departments of my company, I'm like, one, and that's going to sound obvious to you, Joy, but the best performers are not necessarily the best managers. When you put someone in charge of leading people, they need to be patient, nurturing. They need to love people and people's processes. They need to be teachers. And, if you have a killer at sales, maybe what they just like to do is to kill it at sales and not teach other people how to sell. Closing the parenthesis. So I love what you're saying. I couldn't agree more. What has worked for you to market, brand, get the attention of the CEOs to not only educate them on that topic, but also get them to be like, we are becoming problem aware. We need to fix something here. And then solution aware, Joy might be the solution, as in the person, although Joy as a concept is also good. And then to, get into a call with you to be like, yeah, that's something we want to explore. How do you market?
So I'll start with, I think CEOs trust other CEOs. And so I've found that I don't do a lot of direct marketing to CEOs. I have a pretty strong referral program. And a part of it comes from speaking their language. So one recent example, when Brian Chesky from Airbnb and then Paul Graham from Y Combinator came out with that concept of founder mode, basically saying, founders, stop hiring all these like bigwig operators and getting yourself away from the day-to-day of your business. Like, go back to founder mode and crush it. And it was super controversial because operators are like, no, founders, like, you're hiring us for a reason. Let us do our jobs. And founders are like, hooray, I get to go back to being an engineer or a salesperson again. I don't have to be the CEO. But what I found was I started writing about founder mode, and I started writing about how you scale founder mode is actually through this concept of principles, stories, and rituals. And it's like, you can actually, the key is to do both, but do it with intention. And so I think the first piece of, making sure that CEOs you're working with have an outstanding experience, which I've been just amazed at how few CEOs have outstanding experiences with consultants and coaches. And so if you can just deliver value, first and foremost, and not be afraid to say, what other CEOs do you think could benefit from working with me, and asking for that introduction, and then writing, communicating, being in the places or on the topics that are mattering to them, such as the founder mode example. And then I think the final piece is like deeply psychologically understanding their pain and helping them see the path to alleviating it that may be an unexpected path. And so that's been pretty effective for me, at least, is kind of those three tiers of reaching CEOs.
So tell me a bit more about this referral program. I like it because it seems that you're doing it intentionally. The reason I'm saying this is I talk to a lot of B2B coaches and consultants. Referral is the number one thing I hear by far when it comes to referrals, when it comes to client acquisition. The thing is, it's very, it's ups and downs. It's feast and famines. It's like whenever someone wants to or feels or like find someone who they can refer to me, they will. But like, it's not a reliable acquisition channel in my experience. But you seem a bit more intentional about it. You ask for it. Which other CEO could benefit from this? Can you break down for us and the people listening to us how you activate referrals and how you get them to come to you on steroids?
Mm-hmm. Well, one is you're never done. I feel like there's just a perpetual motion with running your own business, right? And like, for example, with referrals, anytime I'm in a conversation with a CEO and they name drop someone, I'm immediately writing down that name, checking them out on LinkedIn, and then we'll send a follow-up note to that CEO that day saying, hey, you mentioned, this person that you've worked with. I checked out their business. I'm wondering if it might be worth an intro call. And it's actually funny. I heard a podcast this morning that said, don't have them email, don't do here's like my bio and an intro, like that's boring. Ask them to call them or text them and say like, hey, can you just put us on a text thread? And just kind of like skip over that step of like scheduling and an email. And we all hate that. So like, just go direct to the source. So that's one thing. It's like, I don't really stop doing that. I feel like I'm always in that headspace of who else do you know? How can I expand my network? Where might there be more opportunities to support more people? Another thing is I've found a lot of success with building and running CEO groups. So I moved from New York City to Charleston, South Carolina, a couple of years ago. And I was running CEO groups in New York, and it was kind of easy because there were so many, right? There were so many CEOs. But what happens when you're, as a coach, when you're running a CEO group, you're constantly working on your facilitation skills. It's a super challenging environment because you're having to really like calibrate in real time and support these CEOs in massive, massive challenges, but also create a community and a peer group amongst them that gels and has high trust. But as a referral engine, actually being in that seat and providing value as a facilitator of these groups has been probably one of the most exponential business development tools for me, because I'm deep in it and I see their problems on a day-to-day basis, right? And then when I moved to Charleston, I was like, okay, I'll live here and then I'll fly to New York and work in New York, right? But pretty quickly, I realized that there were a lot of really smart people running cool companies also in this little town of Charleston. And they desperately wanted a community of high performers. So I just started cold DMing people on LinkedIn saying, I moved here, I run CEO groups, thinking about building one here. And super organically, that's happened too. And now some of my top 3 revenue clients are Charleston, South Carolina businesses, which I never thought would happen. And so the last thing is every 6 months, I ask myself, what's something I learned in the last 6 months that I think could be valuable to a CEO? And then how do I communicate that in a way that's going to lead to more referrals? And so maybe that is like, this principles, stories, rituals framework. How can I give that away? So I may say, I'm going to do a free, webinar on this topic. And with it's going to come a journal that you can actually leave and start journaling what your principles and the stories are that shaped them. And that's going to help you kickstart this work. So trying to figure out ways to share learnings and add value, but then not be afraid to ask for the referral. And I think that final piece can be so challenging for us in this world of running our own businesses, and is like, believe in what you're selling and the value of it, and don't be afraid to ask people to share the news. Testimonials help with that, newsletter, and having people, promote your newsletter, share your newsletter, make it easy for people too. That's maybe the last thing I'll say is, I had a CEO text me the other day. He's like, amazing newsletter. These are the points that resonated this week. And I was like, amazing. Can you share it with 5 friends? And so just, again, like being bold and not being afraid to say, if you like it, tell people.
Okay. I love this. I'm going to do something that I've never done on this podcast. This is what you trigger, Joy. I'm going to give away one of the things that gets us so much business. I'm going to give the numbers.
I'm taking notes.
I think B2B coaches and consultants rely on referral. I have my thoughts on this. We've already talked. Like, if you rely on referrals, you might as well put it on steroids. Every interaction where the person has made a decision, typically purchasing decision, or you had a review call after a milestone, they are happy. The very thing that you just said, Joy, here is how I phrase it. Hey, John, who else do you know who's as awesome as you would benefit from this? Note the little ego stroke whilst you do this. And don't get me wrong, they know what you're doing, and they dream their team would do the same, because that's best practice. So like, don't be pushy, just ask, who else do you know who's as awesome as you would benefit from this? Not that. Do you know anybody? More, who else do you know? They have to think. And I think that's what you do as well, Joe. If they give you a name, you note it down, and then you're like, amazing, would you mind doing a 3 words introduction? Like via text or email? Yes, no, cool. I can even send you the text. Hey, just signed up for XYZ. This is name of the person, sales guy or saleswoman. I'll let you take it from here if relevant. Now you have a warm introduction. You don't stop here. Anyone else comes to mind? And now you can have 2 or 3 referrals. If they don't give you anybody, you're like, cool. So, I have to ask, otherwise, and here you put the founder of the company or my audience or whatsoever. So for my sales, it would be, and I have to ask because otherwise Guillaume would kill me. Do you know anyone who's not as awesome as you, but who could benefit from it? This is a joke. So don't be a weirdo when you say this. But they have a laugh and they think about, okay, do I know anyone else? If they gave you no names, right? Again, they know what you're doing. They wish their team was doing it. And if they don't come up with a name, now you stop. Referrals should be 30% of your inbound business, which also means that if you only rely on referrals, you have a 3x multiplier here, but that's another discussion. This murders because you do it nicely. You have the script in your head because it needs to be smooth, and you get so much business out of this.
Oh, I love it.
Go ahead.
So I started a group of chief people officers called Wendy Road, and it's based on the Billions, that TV show, the character Wendy Rhodes, who's their performance coach. But Wendy Road is like a mindset, and it's a place, and it's a community.
So freaking good.
Thank you. I did it with my co-founder, Allie Russell, who's amazing. And what we found is, so we're now in our 4th cohort, and we put them into groups of about 10 other people leaders, and we go to like bougie dinners in New York, like private room, bougie dinner, but it's covert development. We have a topic that's intense. We have pre-work, and they come to this 3-hour dinner and they eat and drink and they have great connections, but they also develop deeply. Like we have a debate team dinner where they actually have to debate 2 very pressing topical issues during this entire dinner. And there's a winning team and a losing team. But one of the things that we found is that the Wendy's, the people who are in Wendy Road, are an amazing referral engine also, in that they become this flywheel of the business. And we've like barely even scratched the surface of that, but kind of going back to my model of how I'm fixing HR from 2 different angles, Wendy Road being this curated community, it's also like we know deeply what their needs are and what their problems are. And we can strategically help them by making the connections, by introducing them to a CEO who's going to have the same values alignment and, find that partner that they've been longing for. They can outsource the work to ScaleJOY. So even though I abandoned the CPO, the Chief People Officer, for a while and went up the chain to the CEO, it's now kind of coming full circle where I feel like I'm supporting both in different strategic ways, because I think both are necessary to have investment in both roles and functions if we're going to actually continue to scale cultures.
Oh my God, you're making my job so hard, Joy, because you give me so many things I want to follow up on. And I know we are only halfway through the questions and we're arriving at the end of our interview. So I'm going to ask you one last, but who knows, maybe this is a sign for an encore episode. I'm going to throw another curveball at you just because you've been flying to this interview. And I want to understand what's a bit underneath it as well. What's your number one challenge right now? What's the one thing that, once you're going to crack, you're going to get the whole thing to the next level? What's that one thing for you?
So it's a challenge that I'm on the road to solving. So hopefully that's not a cheat. But I realized this challenge about 6 months ago. And I think it's where a lot of, kind of solopreneurs get to it about year 5, where you're like, cool, I can keep on this hamster wheel forever like this. Or I can get really smart and strategic about how I scale this thing. And so I'm launching the ScaleJOY Collective this year, which is going to be a digital community where every piece of content I've ever created is going to live to be downloaded, to be white labeled, to be iterated on and made better. So it'll also be a place for HR leaders to like pin up their work and show examples of all the amazing things they're doing within their company to drive culture. So a source for community, inspiration, and content where I'm kind of thinking of it as like a modern day train the trainer. Like you come into the ScaleJOY Collective and you're going to come out a multiplier facilitator who's going to create transformation for your organization. And what problem that solves for me is I've been traveling like pretty extensively for 13 years, and I have young kids and I kind of like want to be home a little bit more, but I don't want to slow down in the business. So instead of, every training needing to wait for me to show up virtually or in person to facilitate it, really enabling HR leaders and people leaders at scale to deliver this work inside their organization through the ScaleJOY Collective. So that's coming in the next month, which I'm really excited about. And then the other piece is I found a lot of consultants who are excellent at delivery, but terrible, like we were talking about before, at business development. And so I'm kind of collecting those people who are niche experts at strategic planning, offsite facilitation, or executive coaching for engineering leaders, really niche people who are outstanding, best in class, who don't want to do it alone, and create partnerships where they can deliver the work and I can be the CEO of the company and support them and enable them, but also, create more revenue streams for people who deserve to be doing this great work out in the world. So challenges scale, and hypothetical solve is through this collective and through partnering with people who are real experts in their field.
And I would just add to that, whilst being at home more, which seems to be one of the objectives. I'm pretty sure you are.
Thank you.
Joy, ladies and gentlemen. Joy, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, check out the new website. Where should they go?
joy@scalejoy.net is my email. Anyone can email me directly. Otherwise, scalejoy.net is the actual webpage. LinkedIn is great too, anywhere. My last name's a little challenging, Sybesma, but you can search ScaleJOY or Joy, and it's pretty easy to find it.
We'll put all the links in the description. Joy, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you. This was so fun. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.
How was